And I'm going to say, since the theme today is procrastinators, welcome. I'm going to thank you for being here on time, because as a procrastinator, that's not always easy. So like usual, we'll start with our opening lines. You'll see them on the screen and I'll read them aloud. The first is, who would you like to thank and for what? Next, what's something you've learned from an obstacle you faced? Or what's something that captivates you? Or even think of a time you saw something differently or got something you never got before. For example, I used to think and feel, and insert whatever you want to say, but then I realized whatever you realized. And lastly, some animals mate for life. Gray wolves, gibbons, cranes, seahorses, bald eagles, beavers, French angelfish, penguins, swans, pigeons, so many animals. So pick one and try to think, if you were their mate, what would you promise them? And yeah, we have a little while here, so go ahead and start writing.
A lot of the thank yous you started. We're now going to expand on how to make them better and how to, write with intent, and how to write quickly. So I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to pass it back over to Sheena, and they are going to tell us how to be a better writer and how to get done the thing that you need to get done.
I guess I joke with my friends a lot that I might as well write out my to-do list and frame it and just put it on a wall, because it often feels like it's never going to change. Week after week, I still need to do this, I still need to do that, the same task haunt me. So on paper, I'm going to ask you to just take a couple of seconds to write down something, scribble down something you should be doing, but aren't. So I'll do it too. Okay. And then when you have something, I want you to take it and crumble it into a ball. Now it might be, a mental ball, it might be a physical ball, but either way, just throw it away. Okay. And now I'm not doing that to imply that you need to get rid of that particular thing, but this is more, I'm hoping at least, to remind all of us that we're the ones with control, and it's up to us to decide when and how we're going to get to the things we want to do and need to do. And on the other hand, we're here to talk about procrastination, right? So how can we resist crunching those things up into little balls, and instead work towards them, but in a way that serves us and results in a sense of accomplishment, pride, or at the very least, relief? A big thing on my list is wedding planning. I was supposed to get married in November 2020. And when the pandemic hit, my partner and I had a lot of decisions to make. And we decided to postpone a year instead of canceling, even though we had no idea what would happen. But we reasoned that, hey, at least this way we have something to hope for, something to look forward to, some kind of joy to anticipate. And, the procrastinator in me thought, oh, and I get another year to plan. But you can guess, I didn't use that time wisely. The other day, we were talking about some kind of table centerpieces, and my partner was like, oh, we have to ask Kristen about flowers. I'm like, who's Kristen? My partner's like, the wedding planner. So that kind of gives you an idea of just how chaotic all of this is. I can't keep up with anything. And people are asking about colors and seating charts and all this stuff. And I just keep saying more information on the way. And then the next big thing that's also relevant to what we're going to talk about today is I'm applying for PhD programs. And my first deadline is December 1st, which is just a few days after my wedding. And there's so much personal statement, research statement, letters of rec, resume, so many different things to get in order. And I'm just how am I going to do all these things? First, though, we're going to watch a little video about procrastination. And I guess this is another way I'm procrastinating. And yeah, I found this video actually when I was supposed to send in a revision of an essay I've been working on. So procrastination sometimes leads to discovery. Actually, one thing I'll say is I told my editor, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm late again. I was trying to work on this presentation about procrastination. And in doing that, I procrastinated on what I owe you. And he was like, don't give yourself a hard time about that. I think what you mean is you're a writer. This is what writers do. They wait. So I don't want you to hate your inner procrastinators. I just want you to learn how to manage them, be mindful of them, so that they don't make your life harder. All right, we'll watch the video.
You might know me from somewhere. I'm always nervous that I won't have enough time to do my work. I just want to be left alone so I can get on with it. When people ask me to do things, even go for a walk in the park, I'm always saying, I don't have enough time. I have so much to do. So it's great when, at last, I've got a clear day. The house is quiet. I've got 8 hours. That should be plenty. But when there's so much time, it seems silly not to read this article in the paper. It's about a celebrity. He just got married. She's pretty. I might just look up what film she was in online. Interesting. Wonder what they're saying over on this website. A volcano? In Indonesia? Wow. Oh, poor things. I'm peckish now. It's hard to stop when there's nothing else to do that's as nice. Some people say I should go out and take a break. Why not go for a walk? But you see, I like to be near my work. If I'm too far, I get guilty. But if I'm too near, well... The perfect distance for doing nothing is when you have the constant chance to do something. It's a bit frightening, to be honest. Someone told me an average life only has 600,000 hours in it. So many people around me are getting on, doing stuff. But if you scare me too much with all of this, I get sad. I lie down and think I'm so hopeless. There's no point getting up. I'm ashamed. I don't like myself very much. It seems like I'm lazy. That's what everyone would say, I know. But in truth, I do nothing. Not because I'm lazy, but because I'm scared. I'm terrified that if I start, what I do will be horrible. I want things to be so amazing, and I know they can't be, so it seems best not even to begin. What helps me the most is when, occasionally, it feels like it doesn't matter. When it feels I can mess up, and that would be okay. When the pressure isn't so great. Like when I was younger, and there was less at stake. There's a bit of me inside you. It's best to try to understand me, and not scare me with perfection. Go gently. Once you've worked out how I work, you'll get a lot more done.
Yeah, that video, every time I watch it, I over relate. Procrastination is just, it's always right there. So that brings us into our next topic, really, which is getting something on the page. And I procrastinate so much that there's been times where I'm on Google and I'll Google like how to stop procrastinating, how to start working. And next thing you know, I'm like doing a deep dive into that. It's really easy. But I think you can Google for the rest of your life, but the only real way to get something done is to start it. I believe that only over time do you find what works best for you. But I have some techniques I'll share that have worked for me so far. And if you have techniques that help you focus and get things done, please share your wisdom with us. So the first point I would say is have empathy for future you. You know, ask yourself questions like, how can you support your future self? Or what pain might future you face if you miss the deadline for your first pick school? Or what if you don't tell that important teacher what they meant to you? Or how embarrassed or guilty might you feel if your future spouse recites vows that bring you to tears while you just have a one-liner you wrote in the Uber over, which is what I'm really worried is going to happen to me if I don't get it together. And just try to, you know, think of like what is optimal for what I want for myself so that you can try to build in small steps to get there instead of thinking of, like, for example, for my vows, better for me to think of what's one beautiful line I could say or one point I want to make versus trying to think like, how am I going to write the whole thing? I'm so stressed. Will it make sense? Like, just start small. Next thing I would say is lower the stakes. Our desire to create something that we think is good enough is persistent, but you know, nothing is perfect. Yes, we want to write the best work we can, But instead of sitting around waiting for brilliance to come and get us, it's a lot easier to just say, you know what, this is going to be messy. This is a first draft. It's going to be imperfect, just like me. And that's okay. Get to embracing your inner, I always mispronounce this word, mediocrity. I think I said it right. And remember, words on a page are a lot easier to edit than words in our head. Just get something down, like lower the stakes as much as you can. The next thing I would say is make a list of your main points. I tend to be jealous of my friends who are great outliners. And I keep trying to do it, and I would encourage you to do it. But the thing is, I'm a mess, and I end up, like, if you could see right around me, I have all these different notebooks all over the place. I don't have an outline. I just make notes, and then I figure out how to map them together later. And so some things that I do are ask myself just the really big zoomed out questions. So for a personal statement, that might be, what are the top things I absolutely want this college to know about me? Why do I want to go here? And you don't have to think of it in the language that you're going to share with them, but just imagine you're talking to a friend. Like, why would you tell your friend you're applying to Sarah Lawrence? What could I contribute to the campus learning environment? What do I want to study? Why? What is it about physics or theater, or physics and theater, that, you know, you're fixated with? And also, one of my favorite questions, what have I done that I'm proud of and want to share? If it's a thank you letter or a toast, you might ask, you know, how can I make sure the recipient of this thank you letter or toast knows what their presence, energy, efforts, time, gifts, and all of that mean to me? And again, don't worry about your tone. Like in this initial, just getting it on the page, we don't care about grammar. We don't care if the language is beautiful. We just care that our thoughts, our sentiments, our emotions are there, however ugly or unpolished they might be. The same goes for wedding vows. And again, what I'm really encouraging you to do here is write down in the most basic of language, the million things you know you want to include, even if you're really unsure how to say them. Even if it's like, oh yeah, I want to say something about how funny this person is, but you don't have the joke you want to recall or an example, even just that bullet point of humor, just, it's better than not having anything on the page. And then also, and we're going to talk about this later, but there's a contest for Real Simple magazine that you can enter to be published. And their prompt is a 400 to 600 word nonfiction essay about a moment of clarity, a simple realization in your life. And the deadline is on Monday. So this is also, it's down to procrastinator time because it's in less than a week. So you might, you know, make a list of what are things you realized. When did something strike you? If you pick that in your opening lines, you're already a step ahead. But just thinking like of times you had that real moment of clarity and writing some of them down. Okay, so next I'm going to share some ways to bite the bullet. And these are all tried and true for me. But again, everyone's different. You want to play around and figure out what helps you kind of get going and stop avoiding the things you're procrastinating on. So for me with writing, I learned this in a comedy class I took, but the teacher, she encouraged us, instead of trying to write jokes, to just record ourselves talking, like pretend we were leaving our friends voice memos about something that had happened. And I returned to the recording myself because sometimes writing is stressful, or it just feels like, oh, I have to find somewhere to sit, I have to focus, I have to be comfortable. Whereas recording myself, I can be out on a walk, buying a bag of chips, and then I think it's funny that like all of the chips left are plain chips, right? I open my phone, I record that to myself. Later, maybe I can make a joke about it. What's great about the recordings is you can always transcribe them later, and you can catch those thoughts that you will forget otherwise. And for that, I would say, just remember, you don't need a lot. You just need some ideas and a draft. So even when you're recording yourself, at some point you might feel a little stressed, like, oh gosh, is this going to make sense to me later? Don't worry about that. If it doesn't make sense to you later, oh well, you move on, you'll find something else. But for me, recording myself sometimes is more accessible than sitting down to write. And so I just share that in case it might work for you. Another thing I like is having an accountability partner. Unfortunately, the sad truth is most of my friends are also terrible procrastinators who can justify anything. So I would say try to find someone who maybe doesn't share that tendency with you, but just someone you can check in with routinely, you can set goals with. Like I have a friend and she'll say, wait, what, you're working on an essay about what? Wait, last week you said you wanted to finish that short story and send it out. Why aren't you doing that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm procrastinating on that. One time, not everyone's in a situation to do this, but one time I Venmoed a friend like $50 or something. And I said, look, you can only send this back to me after I finish this essay. And the stakes were high, right? But I didn't want to lose that money. So that really motivated me. You might give someone one of your cherished books or belongings and say, hold on to this until I finish this thing. Maybe you'll decide you can't get that bubble tea or something else you want until you've written the first 500 words of your personal statement, but figure out what motivates you and stick to it. Also free writing. And I think once you have a few points you want to explore, just carve out 15 minutes to free write. Pay attention to your energy and your creativity as you approach the different points, and you might find you want to lean into some more than others. I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to say about free writing. Oh, sometimes I like to set little contests. Like let's say, you're at home, your parents or someone you live with is coming home in 30 minutes. You might say, how many words can I get down before that person comes home? Or how many different bullet points can I make before the dog comes in here and is like begging me to go on a walk? But just setting out like these little races. If you know the show you want to watch is coming on at 8, how much can you do before that time? And then that way, for me at least, it becomes kind of like a game. Okay, so the next thing is, okay, you've got all these words on the page and they don't make any sense because you listened to my advice and you just jotted things out and totally lowered the stakes. Now what? Okay, you're feeling excited, but how are you going to make those words sing and do what you want them to do? Well, the first thing I would say is, I think maybe not no matter what you're writing, but most of the things we're writing, we want to stand out by being true to our authentic self. Like if you're finishing a paper for biology class, this might not apply. But if it's your personal statement or a thank you letter or a toast or vows, this is a time when you're expected to talk about yourself. So you'll think like, who am I as a person? How does my mind work? What kind of people do I relate to? What am I afraid of? What do I hope for? What do I believe? And when you're thinking of those things, next thing you want to bring in are the details. What do you notice that probably nobody else notices? Use your senses and be specific. It's not just that you notice that people are sad. It might be that you notice that the sky is gray and people walking down your street aren't making eye contact. Make the reader see it. Dialogue. What do the people in your story sound like? What words or phrases do they use? One thing, this is actually so I think there's many helpful ways to procrastinate, but dialogue, like imagining dialogue, is one of my favorite forms of procrastination. When I'm out and about, like I usually have like this tiny little notebook that I carry in my bag or in my pocket, and I love writing down what people say, and later I end up bringing it into stories. And so that, really think about the dialogue, listen to people. And when if you're talking about family and personal statements, try to think of like, what did they really sound like when they said those things? What words did they use? Another thing that's helpful is focusing on nouns and verbs over adjectives. Like if you want your reader to know your big brother is annoying, don't say he's annoying. Show how he's annoying. Like for me, it was that he never got in trouble for anything. What does he do to you? How does he sound? What does he do that nobody else would be caught dead doing? Actions speak, you hear this all the time, a million times louder than words, but you want to show, not tell. You want to get us in there imagining what all of this was like. And sometimes the silliest, most mundane details are the ones that really elevate what you're writing. Okay, you also are going to need a hook. Maybe you'll have a great opener that situates us right in the middle of the action. You can use dialogue, you can proclaim a want or desire or make a statement. And the last thing, probably my favorite, is humor. And we don't see enough of this. But the person reading your essay is probably reading hundreds, maybe thousands, and reading of similar statements, you know, and reading something like when you come across something and it just has like a sharp, unique perspective, it's so refreshing. I think humor is really integral to how we connect with each other, especially when it's self-effacing or it captures something we feel or think, but don't express or don't show the world all the time. I mean, with humor, I would say the one caution point is don't ever resort to it just because you want to stand out. Really think about, you know, how is it opening up or representing something integral to who you are or something that's important to another point you're making. You also want to be mindful not to offend people, or, you know, trying to go just for shock value in order to stand out, because that's not a good way to stand out. And if you're going to use humor, one thing I would say is punch up, not down. You know, don't take jabs at other people. There's no point in that. But use humor to like invoke surprise and in a positive way if you can. So next we're going to look at some examples, and I'm going to ask you to chime in on what might make them better. Okay, so personal statement: I work hard and I'm determined to succeed. You know, it's going to be really unlikely that someone's going to write, I don't work hard, I don't want to succeed. There's nothing too unique about this sentiment. So think instead about what success means, or think about sharing more specific aims and intentions you have and what you intend to do and are already doing to get there. The next one is, I realized I need to practice self-care. So that could be a response to the My Simple Realization contest. And I would say, instead of saying you practice self-care, tell us more about the situation that led you to realize that you needed self-care. Use some details. What does self-care look like for you? Why is it important, or what could other people learn from what you learned about self-care? Okay, the thank you note you might write, I'm so grateful for you and all you've done for me. Okay, that's kind for sure. But what the heck did the person do for you, and how did it impact you? And how can you say this in a way that is unique between you and the person you're thinking, that couldn't just be applied in some mass market thank you card? And then last, I was at a wedding actually over the weekend, and someone said this: I love you and promise to always love you. You know, that's beautiful and probably something a lot of us would be happy to hear. But, you know, instead, it might be more powerful to think about, what do you love about that person you're speaking to? What does promising to love someone mean? And that's where you can bring in humor. You know, love means this is your remote, fine. Or love means you can have my Netflix password. Okay. And that already gives some personality. And in all of these cases, what's missing is the writer's unique personality, point of view, voice, details. So I encourage you to make a list of the points you know you want to convey, and then return to them and ask, like, how can I get more me in there? How can I write this in a way that reflects my experiences, hopes, personality, and aims? And don't worry about trying to impress or any of that. Just embrace who you are and what you stand for. Okay, summary. Try to lower the stakes so you aren't as intimidated to get started. As you begin, don't worry too much about how eloquent or brilliant you sound. Focus on the point you want to make. And remember, you can edit something a million times unless you've waited too long until that deadline, in which case maybe do worry about how eloquent you sound. And just make sure you're bringing your voice and point of view in so that you can keep your distance from cliches and write something that only you could have written. And also, I hope, you know, something you have fun writing.
I was taking mental and physical notes during that entire time, and I hope that you all were as well, because those were some brilliant tips that you shared. So thank you so much. Now we're going to do a quick employee insider. We have two wonderful speakers from HMH who are going to be giving a short little elevator pitch about who they are, how they got to the position that they did, like and anything that may have changed along the way. So first, and sorry if I'm cold calling you a bit, but if Jenny Weiss, the HMH Senior Production Manager, would be willing to go first and share a little bit about your journey, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dacia, and thanks for pronouncing my last name right, even though I didn't put the phonetics up. So I appreciate that. So my name is Jenny, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a senior product manager at HMH for some of our math programs. And what that means is that I try to make decisions about what kind of math programs we make and how we can make math software and books better for students and teachers. And I get to learn a little bit about a lot of things. Like I might be looking at a math problem itself one day, like a page of a math book. And then another day, I might be looking at a budget or a marketing piece, or even learning about like the kind of paper that the books are printed on, or like how they get packed into the boxes. But when I graduated from high school and even college, I definitely didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had liked writing, and I had been good at editing and helping other people make their writing better. So when I was in college, I had a job editing travel guides. And then after that, I edited some magazines that were about topics that I was interested in. And from there, I ended up editing textbooks and test prep books. And I really enjoyed that because I liked making sure that the activities and the instruction were clear and actually made sense, and that it was accurate and true, especially for something like math, but science or social studies, and that it was that everything was like appropriate and would be like the best learning experience. So I kept being an editor in education, and then I managed other editors, but I also was interested in so many different elements of the process. So when I became a product manager, I started to get to work with like so many more different groups and do a lot of different things. But also I have been lately taking writing classes in the evenings. So that's kind of my arc.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Jenny. And I hope mentees, you were able to learn a little bit about Jenny and a little bit about what she does and a little bit about how she got there. So thank you again for sharing. And now we're going to hear a little bit from Patricia Starek. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name.
Oh, you got it right.
Woo!
Hey guys, so thrilled to be with you. I am also a senior product manager, but in the literacy space, and it's been a long and winding road to get here. Had no idea. I was an art history major in college, but I was a poet from about 9th grade on, and still am. And at this point in my career, I love words. I'm a vocabulary lover. Some of my colleagues know I've even written a poem about the importance of vocabulary. It's absolutely critical. I got in trouble for talking a lot as a kid. I don't know if that's any of you guys. They called me Chatty Patty. I actually had to write I, will, not, talk 1,000 times, like when I was in 4th grade secretly, because I talk so much. And my signature poem actually is called Shh, and it's all about being told not to be quiet. So I love language and I love words. I didn't quite know how to cultivate that into a career. And I was a slam poet back in the 90s, if any of you know what that is, like competitive poetry. But I did think maybe I wanted to do something with writing. I actually applied to Women's Sports and Fitness magazine back a long time ago. And I became a teacher. And I fell in love with kids. And I actually fell in love with the kids in some ways who were the opposite of me. And those who know me on my team know I'm very gregarious, very loquacious, but I actually worked with kids who have speech and language disabilities, kids who are in many cases locked outside of words, many of whom have IEPs or in special education. Some might be classified as dyslexia. Cut to now, what does that mean? I work with a group of really passionate people who publish one of the biggest reading intervention programs in the United States of America for kids 3rd grade and up who can't read well yet. And that's the thing. So dedicated. I'm like a phonics geek. I love the system and the rules of the English language and making those available to your peers who might be really struggling, because there are 15-year-olds, there are 17-year-olds who don't know how to read. So it's sort of this marriage of the passion for the language and making it accessible to kids. I also have had the opportunity to write some poems celebrating kids who've had a turnaround, who've gone from being like a non-reader to a proficient reader to being in graduate school now. So it's been sort of a beautiful marriage of the two. So there's so many ways you can take your passion for writing into the world, and sort of an unexpected road for myself. So can't wait to see what you guys all do.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was incredible. And the work that you do sounds incredible. And I too was very chatty in school, so I totally relate to that. So thank you both for sharing. So first, we really just want to thank HMH for being a Girls Right Now agent of change. Thank you so much to the mentors who are here today. And then finally, here are some of the takeaways and next steps from this workshop. So please review the sample essays and the self-editing tips that are in the lesson plan. Just, you know what, just review that lesson plan overall. There's so many great tips for sort of writing when you're stuck in a writer's block or you can't seem to get done that thing that you need to do. And yeah, work on your essay, your thank you note, or your wedding vows. You can also submit your My Simple Realization essay to the link that is in the chat, and it's also in the lesson plan. And just a reminder, the contest winner will receive $500 and will be published in Real Simple, a magazine that has a reach of 6.2 million, yes, million subscribers. And also, here are some just important things to remember is that writing speeches and vows is a great career for a wordsmith. And listen, even the most successful people procrastinate. We have a room here full of successful people. And I think that I speak for all of you when I say that we all procrastinate, which is maybe why we're here. So remember that you're not alone and that you do have the power to be able to do the things that you need and want to do. And with that, thank you all so, so much for joining. I had such a fun time. I hope you were able to get something out of this. Follow us on social if you want to learn more at Girls Right Now. Thank you again, mentors. Thank you all for being here again. And I hope that you have an absolutely incredible evening. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.